The college baseball regular season has come to an end, which brings us to the final rankings video of the season. Hi everyone, I'm Wheels with one last breakdown of the D1 Baseball Top 25 for this year. Next week's video will likely be a breakdown for the field of 64, so keep an eye out for that. It'll be a shorter video this week since I'm going to the Yankee game tonight and I still have to edit Game 3 of Virginia Tech vs. Virginia, which was a really great game that you all should watch after this video. Here's the format for this video, which will cover a lot in a short amount of time. In addition to the rankings, I'll review my predictions from last week, predict the softball super regionals, some of the baseball conference tournaments, as well as a full game-by-game preview of the SEC tournament, and I'll also give my projected top 16 seeds going into the postseason in a week and a half. Okay, now the rankings. At 25 is Southern Miss, who replaces South Carolina in the rankings. They're the only new team to enter. Texas moves up to 24, and Oregon stays at 23. Wake Forest drops 14 spots to number 22 after getting swept by NC State, which likely takes them out of the hosting conversation. No changes in the next 3 spots, as Louisiana stays at 21, Indiana State is at 20, and Oklahoma State remains at 19. Arizona drops to 18 after losing 2 out of 3 to Oregon State, though they did clinch the Pac-12 regular season title with a Game 3 walk-off. Duke drops out of a hosting position to number 17 after losing a series to North Carolina. Re-entering the all-important top 16 is Virginia, who I think deserves to host for regionals. At 15 is Mississippi State, who likely needs a couple wins in Hoover to improve their RPI if they want to host. UC Irvine moves up 1 spot to 14, with UC Santa Barbara making a huge jump all the way from 22 to 13 after they improved their record in Big West Conference play to 23-4. NC State may have been the team that impressed me the most last week, as their sweep of Wake Forest moves them up to 12. That should solidify them as a host for regionals. Dropping to 11 is Georgia. That series loss to Florida really hurts their chances to be a top 8 national seed, but they're still going to be a host for regionals at the very least. As always, before the top 10, it's prediction time. After my worst performance of the season last week, I responded by going 15-4 in predictions this week. Regular season record finishes at 65, 41, and 1. Little different this week since it's conference tournament time, so I'm going to predict the winners of the Power 5 tournaments, but first I'm going to pick all 8 softball super regionals, which start on Thursday. I'm going with Oklahoma over Florida State, UCLA over Georgia, Florida over Baylor, Duke over Missouri, Tennessee over Alabama, Texas over Texas A&M, Oklahoma State over Arizona, and Stanford over LSU. For baseball, I have NC State in the ACC tournament, Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament, Oregon State in the Pac-12 tournament, Illinois for the Big 10 tournament, and for the SEC tournament, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer because after finishing the rankings, I'm going to go through the bracket and pick each individual game. Okay, now the top 10. Staying at 10 is Florida State, who kept their hopes alive for a top 8 national seed with a series win over Georgia Tech. East Carolina did the same, as they moved back up to 9 after sweeping Rice, who they'll see again to open up AAC conference tournament play on Tuesday. I'm not sure if their RPI is strong enough to be a top 8 team, but they should be safely in a position to host for regionals at the very least. Entering the top 8 is Oklahoma, who continues to make significant jumps in the rankings every week. Somehow, North Carolina is still at just number 7. Kinda surprised, considering they won the ACC regular season title by a full 2 games and are 4th in RPI, which is the highest non-SEC team. I think they're going to be seeded much higher than this on Selection Monday, and after I go through my predictions for the SEC tournament, I'm going to project out who I think the 16 host seeds will be for the national tournament, so stay tuned for all of that very shortly. At number 6 is Oregon State, who likely secured their spot in the top 8 with a road series win over Arizona. Arkansas drops to 5 after losing 2 out of 3 to Texas A&M, who jumps them by 1 spot and is at 4. If there were any questions about them being a top 8 national seed, they answered those questions this past weekend. Clemson is at 3 after sweeping Boston College, which clinched a 40-win regular season for them to go along with a 20-10 conference record. The regular season co-champions stay at the top, with Kentucky at 2 and Tennessee at number 1. Okay, now I'm going to predict each game of the SEC baseball tournament. Here's the bracket. Game 1 is between Georgia and LSU. On paper, Georgia should win this game, but anything can happen on Tuesdays in Hoover when your pitching depth is tested. I think the bigger ballpark will slow down the Bulldogs' offense, and LSU will pick up a huge win that they need to bolster their resume for the postseason. Game 2 is between a couple of 13-win teams, so this may act as a play-in for the postseason, though both teams are top 20 in RPI, so they're in a solid spot either way. Like LSU, Alabama typically performs really well every year in Hoover, so I think they get the win. Game 3 is an even bigger one since these teams are in the mid-20s for RPI. I'm wondering if Vandy is going to start Carter Holton in this one, since he only threw about 20 pitches last Friday. I give the Doors the pitching edge in this game, so I think they get the win over Florida. Really fun matchup in Game 4 to close out the first day. This will be the 5th time they face each other this year, and with a lot on the line for both teams, I think Mississippi State gets the win over Ole Miss. Day 2 opens up with LSU and Kentucky, which is a game I think Kentucky will take pretty comfortably. Game 6 is Arkansas and Alabama, which I think will be a closer one, but Arkansas gets the win. A fun in-state rivalry for Game 7, which I think will be won by Tennessee. Game 8 will be a big one for Mississippi State if they want to host, and I think they get the job done with a win over Texas A&M. Game 9 would be LSU and Alabama, and now we'll be getting to the point of weekend arms being used. I think LSU wins this one. Game 10 would be Vandy and Texas A&M. This could be a make-or-break game for Vandy's postseason hopes, and they've shown that they can get the job done when they need to the most, so I think they get it done against Texas A&M, who goes 0-2, which honestly isn't the worst thing for a team that's already comfortably in the top 8. Game 11 between Kentucky and Arkansas will decide one of the final 4 teams, and I think this one goes to Kentucky. In Game 12, I have Tennessee handing Mississippi State their first loss of the SEC tournament. Elimination games the rest of the way. LSU against Arkansas would open up play on Friday, and I think the Tigers get a really big win here in what could be a pitching matchup between Luke Holman and Hagen Smith. Game 14 would be a rematch between Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, 2 teams I watched face one another in person earlier this season. By this point, I think Vandy would have done enough to lock up their spot in the postseason, and with hosting implications still on the line, Mississippi State gets the win to lock up the final spot in the semifinals. The first semifinal game would be another matchup between LSU and Kentucky, which I think will go to the Wildcats, who advance to the championship game. The second semifinal would be Tennessee against Mississippi State, which I think goes to the Volunteers. This would set up a championship game between the top 2 teams. This could go either way since these are both really good teams, but I think Kentucky will win the 2024 SEC championship game. And now, I have created my own projected top 16 seeds for the national tournament. I'll start from the middle and work my way out. I think Florida State will be at number 8, paired with Georgia at number 9. I just can't see the SEC getting 5 teams in the top 8. Number 7 will be Oregon State, matched up with East Carolina at 10. 6 will be Clemson, setting up for a fun possible super regional with number 11 NC State. Arkansas at 5, with Indiana State hosting for a second consecutive year at 12. Really fun one next up, with Texas A&M at 4 and Oklahoma at 13. The next 2 pair conference opponents, with Kentucky at 3, Mississippi State at 14, North Carolina at 2, and Virginia at 15. Just remember, the committee doesn't like having the top 2 teams come from the same conference, which is why I have Kentucky down at number 3. Tennessee earns the top spot, paired with UC Santa Barbara, who takes the final hosting position. And there you have it. Lots of great baseball coming up this week. Expect a ton of uploads to follow at all times of day. I hope you all enjoyed the video and are ready for another exciting college baseball postseason. With about a month to go in the season, Wheels Mode is officially activated.